This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We must increase vaccinations among the unvaccinated with new vaccination requirements.
It's not going to work. We have other countries with much higher rates of vaccination, and they're seeing record surges of COVID because that's what viruses do.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated.
Their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
Rest in peace, Wheezy.
We are going to need the people to engage in age-old American tradition of simply saying, no, I'm not going to comply. Now, what are you going to do about it? It never stops. They want things to get worse because they want you to suffer so that they can grandstand on your suffering and push for even more control.
They have criminalized freedom. They've made getting sick illegal.
This isn't about COVID any more than the Patriot Act was about Al-Qaeda. It's about government asserting more control over your lives, your rights, your properties, and in this case, your bodily autonomy.
It has a lot of vaccinated people alarmed because of the power grab that's involved.
Enough is enough. We better change our tune and start resisting.
Government makes up less than 1% of the population. If even 5 or 10% of Americans simply refuse to comply, all of this goes away.
Absolutely, this is the hill worth dying on.
We haven't given the statutory authority to any agency to do this kind of thing.
There is no such thing as government power. There's only what we are willing to comply to.
We're in a tough stretch, and it could last for a while.
That's what this has always been about. It's never about what they say it is. It's about controlling you. And it ends when we decide to end it.
This BS is going to stop.
It's time for us to
There's
wake
only
up.
one way to fight back against this, and it's mass non-compliance.
This is the most important thing to fight against.
You can help stop this. You are the power.
There's nothing, not a single thing we're unable to do if we do it together.
The following is a Goulash Media production. GoulashMedia.net.
I'll make questionable decisions. I'll be in fact of all I soul. Judge me for my sins. Live on your image.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. If you're feeling like down on life, if you're feeling down in the dumps, that you've got this hard struggle that you're going through in life, hey, it's okay. At least you're not Australia. We're gonna talk about Australia here in a moment, and we've got somebody who's got the inside scoop, unfortunately for him, and we'll get into that here in just a moment. But before we do, kill the music. I gotta remind you guys about a few things. First and foremost, being you guys in the Downers Club. Hold on. Let me pause. We've got a shit ton of new people in here, and I gotta read off at least the new ones because they're new, and there's a good chance I'll never get to them if I don't now. So if you're here because of the Tom McDonald interview, welcome back, and thank you for sticking around. People like Keith Compston, Joanne Schreffler, I'm sure I'm nailing these. Cole, thank you for having an easy name. It is more likely that your name will be read on this list more often than Joanne Schreffler. Convinced Cryptozoid, yes. I'm nailing this. Cynthia, Singer, something, Asper, Michael, Daraman, Brittany, Bowen, KS, Greg, Heffalumps, Woozles, Dickie, Walnuts, Lauren Carter, and continuing as normal. Representation 0, Shannon Carter, Michael Carr, something Martinez, she's in here. Level 0, Rick Duran, Javari, Andrew Sitchling, Kyle Evans, Craig DeCosta, Ryan Mortensen, Joe Kapinski, Derek Evans, Davis Johnson, John Odermatt, Tim Brown, Aaron Stewart, Howie Snowden, Nathan Sipes, David White, Lucas Riley, Mary Rome, John Barnhouse, William Wells. If your name is easy to read, then it's more likely that I'll get to them. But if you would like to get your name on that list, if you would like to get more weird, more raw, more offensive, more weekly content, all of the bonus extended interviews and after parties and game shows and fun shit over in the Downers Club, you can get that every single week. Patreon.com/The System Is Down for as little as $5 a month. That is the cost. If you're not good at math, that's the same cost as one super chat per month. And you don't just get your chat read, you get to converse with our family, and you get a whole bunch of bonus content for only $5 a month over at patreon.com/The System Is Down. We are also sponsored by our shirt store, as you guys know, with the lovely shirts like, first, It's available over at thesystemsdown.tv/store, and you can get such wonderful shirts as the Let's Go Brandon classic, new classic. You can get the I Survived the Forever Purge, and all I got was this spicy flu. Shannon, I'm looking at you and all of you Floridians out there who just by the skin of your teeth made it out alive from this deadly pandemic. And you can get the Soylent 19, the vaccine is people shirt, because as we all know, the vaccine is people. Over at thesystemsdown.tv/store. Check it out. We are also sponsored by other things that are in here somewhere. Jack Casey, the evil Jack Casey, who got into some online shit this week. The controversial, terrible Jack Casey that might be why he supports this show, because he's such an awful, awful person. But if you want to find out more about his awfulness, but his wonderful writing, go get his book, The Royal Green, and all of his other books over at theroyalgreen.com, including his latest, which is Crowned by Gold. I hear that it's a great series, and if I wasn't, if my brain wasn't broken to the point where I can't focus long enough to read a page, I would probably read them myself. No guarantees that I would even read them then. But I hope that you do. If you're a smart person who reads things, go to theroyalgreen.com and support Jack Casey. We are also sponsored by Free Ounce of Kratom. If you want to get Kratom before... Okay, so Free Ounce of Kratom and My Brave Botanicals, I used to talk about Delta 8 THC that you could get on there, shipped to your door. Weed to your door. How could you go wrong with that? But, the Texas government just outlawed Delta 8 THC, so they can't ship it out right now, and they're working on a workaround because, screw that shit. But you can still get your Kratom. If you haven't tried it now, the government's currently working on making that a Class 1 scheduled drug, as though it has zero benefits at all to anybody. If you would like to find out how wrong they are, go check it out at freeounceofkratom.com. You can also get colloidal silver, vitamins, minerals, and all sorts of fun natural things that the government doesn't like you being able to get. You can get 5% off your entire order with the promo code TSID at freeounceofkratom.com. Now, get that out of there. Now, as I said, we do have a very special guest today. It is a man who... we don't need to talk about his name, because God only knows if he's even allowed to share his name, or if he's allowed. I'm surprised he's allowed to do this right now. But we're gonna find out all the details about that right as soon as I find the right button here. It is Liberty Down Under, sir. Welcome to the show, and how are you doing? All things considered. Good to be here.
Look, doing the best I can right now. To be honest, It's not great.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Tell me a little bit about you. Feel free to, if there's anything that's too personal or anything that's going to give away, anything, any identity or anything like that you don't want out there. Is it a concern for your identity to be out there? Is that why you don't use your real name?
Correct.
Okay.
Just to be safe.
Sure. So give me just a little bit of background on you. Like, how did you find the ideas of liberty and stuff like that? Because as a stupid American, we just assume that everybody else is like heathenists and they don't understand these things that our big brains process here in America. So, Liberty, tell me your story briefly.
It's a very convoluted story. I started off as a leftist back in 2016-17. And then we had a same-sex marriage vote over here in 2017 to legalize same-sex marriage. That was a plebiscite. Voluntary voting, which is the first time we've had voluntary voting in like 100 years, because we have mandatory voting right now.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that on another interview. And I'm going to say the same thing as all the other dumb Americans that have interviewed you lately, Clint and Josh and Mark and everybody. That's fucking crazy. And the fact that we don't know about this as Americans, it just like that alone throws everybody off of just the amount of tyranny that goes into your voting process alone. But please continue.
So I got in a lot of debates there with people who were also on the left, who were supported the same-sex marriage debate, and they were pro same-sex marriage, and I said, well, we should at least let the right speak their voice, and they didn't even want that to happen. They refused to let conservatives who were against same-sex marriage even be allowed to speak their opinion publicly. So that was a real really turned me off PC culture. Then started watching a bit of Trevor Noah and all the late night hosts, a bit, and then YouTube recommended me to watch Steven Crowder.
Sure.
Which was a red pill, and then I went from him straight to anarchists with e-militia.
Nice.
on their podcast, and then it was a slow journey down to anarchist on the political compass.
Yeah. Okay, so leftist. So did Steven Crowder convert you to red pilling, and then this the pipeline down to anarchism or whatever they want to call it?
Yeah, so I went from social democrat to neocon with Steven Crowder, and then dropped south fast and became an anarchist.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, right on. It sounds like the American culture has a lot of impression over there. Like are there any personalities in like your country that influenced you at all, or is it mostly just coming out of here?
It's a mixture of America and Australia. We've had lots of political, I guess, leadership spills over the last few years, because the way it works over here is our prime minister is drawn from the lower house.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have we don't have an independent executive. So watching what they've been doing, and they keep having leadership spills. So whenever the leader becomes unpopular, what they do is they then get rid of him and then hold a new vote amongst the members who are in parliament, and they then elect a replacement. And so we've had lots of drama surrounding that in the last 10 years. And watching people go from bad to worse really turned me off Australian politics in general.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about they already had the mindset of leftists being the extreme leftists who don't just want their way. They want their way, and you are not allowed to think another way. Is that kind of what you're dealing with?
Yes.
So it's a country full of COVID. Californians, basically.
Yep.
Nice. It sounds miserable. So you were born and raised in the country, right?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So this is now, before we get too deep into the serious matter, as a guy who likes to dig into conspiracies and has a lot of crazy friends, I have to ask you some icebreaker questions here. First one being, I've heard Australia is not real. Can you confirm or deny this theory once and for all for the conspiracy theorists?
I'm actually a paid actor from the UK.
Wow, nice. Does it pay well?
Yes, it does, which is good.
That's good. There's some heads exploding right now. We're like, see, I fucking told you. Now, I also wanted to ask you, not unrelated to COVID, the wildfires that were raging out of control. We heard about those all over the news last year or the year before or whatever in Australia. The whole place we heard was literally on fire. Was that true or a little bit blown out?
Yeah, so there was fires all across Victoria and New South Wales, which were massive. And then we went straight from those to COVID.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like California did the same thing. What happened to all these fires that were raging out of control everywhere, all over, and then suddenly went away when COVID came around? I don't know. We don't have to get too conspiracy. Maybe we'll dig more into the conspiracy stuff in the bonus. But so Australia is allegedly real. I'll accept your answer. But what would you say is worse so far? The fires raging out of control, or the way your government has handled COVID?
Definitely the later. Definitely
Yeah.
COVID.
So let's talk about kind of the creep of tyranny, because we're seeing it here for sure. We're seeing some of the, I would imagine, earlier stages of what you're going through. But you guys are like drove straight off the cliff right from the get-go. Like, what was kind of the process leading up through the COVID stuff? Like, tell me the story of when you first found out about COVID, between there to like when it was all completely locked down. What was kind of that process creeping in?
So we had a couple of weeks in March where we didn't have lockdowns, but we knew COVID existed, and then we went straight into hard lockdowns, basically all across the country. After 3 or 4 months, we defeated the first wave of COVID, but since then we've had more and more waves coming into the country. I think Melbourne and Victoria are up to their 6th or 7th wave of COVID right now.
Okay.
So every time we have a new wave of COVID, the restrictions get tougher.
Yeah. Now, when you say lockdown, what, like, we say lockdown here, and depending on what part of the country you live in, lockdown could be anything from you're not allowed to leave your house to, you have to stay inside if you are sick. There's just a wide range of things that people call lockdown. How strict is your lockdown?
So in Melbourne and Sydney, they've had you can't leave your house orders at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's one story from back during when Sydney was really locked down a few months ago, where someone left their house in their car to get a breath of fresh air. The police were doing the rounds, knocking on doors, making sure everyone's at home. He wasn't at home. They waited for him to come home and then find him when he got home.
Wow. Do they just fine you, or does it go further than that if you continue to not comply with their bullshit?
If you organize protests, you'll get arrested.
Okay. And do you guys have any kind of constitution or anything that protect, like, do you have freedom of speech, or how does that work? I mean, not that it matters, because we have it too, but that doesn't matter when they feel like it not mattering, so, you know.
We don't have a Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
Our Constitution has very limited rights, like right to vote and right to a jury, that sort of stuff. Freedom of religion, but nothing to deal with freedom of speech or anything like that. We have a couple of states have human rights acts, but those are the same level as any other piece of legislation, so they aren't elevated in any way.
Okay.
So they can just easily be overridden.
Yeah. So it's hard to even grasp. Like, as somebody who, like, we've had some sort of lockdowns here and there and there's a lot of bullshit that I've been fighting against, but it's never been to the level of you're not allowed to leave your house or you'll get fined or arrested or whatever. To my knowledge, at least. I mean, maybe in some places of New York, but not here at all. And I don't leave my house anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. It's so how does that even work? With you not being able to leave your house, how do you get food? How do you do anything? How do you live? Do you have to have things drone? Does Amazon have to drone ship things to your house, or what's going on?
So you can go buy groceries, but it's only one person from our household per day can go to the shops.
How do they prove it? I mean, I guess if they're going around knocking on doors, that would kind of do the trick, but do they like go around and say, you've got 2 people in your house, we know you do, and, you know, or maybe you've got 5 people living in a house, 2 of them are missing, so we're going to go track them down? Or how extreme does that get?
So all across the country, we've got mandatory QR codes. So wherever we go, to the shops or to the parks or anything like that, you've got to scan you've got to use your phone to scan the QR code for COVID contact tracing. So the government knows where you are. And it got even worse. In South Australia, there was a proposal. I think I don't know if they put it in place, but it was definitely, became policy that what they'd do is if you were in quarantine, at any time during the day, the police could send you a text and say, tell us where you are. And you'd have to reply to them by sending them a photo of your face of where you are. And if you don't reply with that photo within 15 minutes, they'll come to your house to punish you.
Wow, okay. That's yeah. Have you found a lot of the people that you've been interviewed by lately just at a loss for words? Because I've got some questions and stuff, but the things you're saying, I'm just like, it sounds like a fucking movie. And
yes,
we're over here bitching about our stuff, and I don't mean to downplay what we're going through here, because it's all bad, it's all wrong, it's all tyranny. There's just different levels of it, and you guys just you're getting hit with a lot worse. But yeah, man. So you've got a QR code, and are you allowed to make Holocaust comparisons, or are you still not? Will you still get called a Nazi if you make Holocaust comparisons?
Some Aussies do, but I don't, just to play it safe. I don't want to go into using that language.
Sure.
But yes. A lot of people have made the comparison.
Yeah. It's... I know it's kind of a lazy, comparison, and there aren't people dying, or there aren't people being killed for this yet, but when you are separating, different classes of people, not just different classes, but you've got a QR code, and you've got, markings for people to keep tabs on them. Do the vaccinated people there, do they have any better treatment on this, or do they still have to follow all these procedures and contact tracing and everything like that?
So Victoria and New South Wales are slowly opening up. So in those states, they're easing restrictions for the vaccinated, but not for those who don't have the vaccine. So if you have the vaccine, you get your freedoms back. But if you don't, you still stuck where you are.
If you have the vaccine, you get like all of your freedoms back. You just go back to normal life.
A few of your freedoms. It'll be slowly. So as we get more and more vaccinated, the restrictions will ease even further.
Okay. Do you know like the stats on like how many people have died, how many people have caught it, like if the vaccines are doing anything?
So death-wise, I don't think it's a death-wise. It's only I think around 1,500. A lot of those cases are most of those are from Victoria.
Okay.
But we're looking at around 1,500 cases and around 125,000 cases. So 1,500 deaths and 125,000 cases.
Okay. And that how many people? Like, what's the population of Australia?
25 million.
Okay. I'm not good with math. Is that high or is it low?
We're the sixth biggest country in the world. We've only got 25 million people. We're about the size of New York.
Okay.
New York City.
Yeah.
And a few outlying areas. But that's about that's the population for our entire country.
Gotcha. So let's talk about how has this impacted the economy? Because we talk about like Joe Biden is collapsing the economy here, because of all these lockdowns, because of these mandates and everything. But you guys are like still leaps and bounds ahead of us on this test run of tyranny. So how is that affected, importing, exporting, and just, people being allowed or not allowed to go shopping? How's that impacted inflation and economy and everything?
So inflation is sitting around 2.5%. So it's not as bad as it is in America. It's definitely up from last year. It's more than doubled since last year. I'm pretty sure, from memory. But the economy is not doing very well right now. Yeah. The government's been trying to keep it afloat with stimulus packages. They've been trying to keep the economy afloat that way. But what that's done is it's doubled our national debt, or it's expected to double our national debt because of all the government spending on it.
Well, that's okay. Debt doesn't mean anything when it comes to government. It's perfectly fine. You just print off, $1 trillion coins whenever you feel like it. It goes away. So are you able to work, or how does that go?
It depends where you are. So where I'm in Queensland, which is the northern of the three states. It's of the three East Coast states. It's the least bad. But the comparison there is saying that Mussolini is not as bad as Hitler is.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can work, but people in Melbourne and Sydney, not all of them can go back to their jobs yet, and only if you have the vaccine can you go back to work.
Okay. And what do you do if you can't go back to work? Is it all just government subsidies or what?
So you can apply for welfare.
Okay. So you've got a country on welfare almost entirely, it sounds like, and nobody's allowed to work. And for the importing and exporting, are people like, is there importing coming in? Is there stuff going out, or is that all halted?
Yes, but it's very slow.
Okay. Gotcha. So let's talk about the voting. Let's go back to that, because I think that's a pretty good example of how, we kind of ignore other countries generally as Americans, and we don't really know how things even work. And I'm guilty of it just as much as anybody. But the voting thing is kind of a good sign of like, this was going in the wrong direction long before COVID hit. You guys are forced to vote. Can you explain how that process works exactly?
Yeah, so it was the reason they gave for it originally is it was just a temporary thing after World War I, and as we know, there's no such, like, when it comes to the government, there is no such thing as temporary; it's all permanent. So it's been about 100 years since it was first brought in. The reason they gave to start was because we had low voter turnouts because of World War I, so they wanted to increase voter turnouts for the few elections after the war, and then they kept it permanently. But the interesting thing there is it was started, I think, 1915 in Queensland, which is like a year into the war. So the argument that it was being done because we had low voter turnouts after the war doesn't make much sense to me, because it started while we were in the war.
Yeah. Shannon said, "Man, it's a downer when Dan gets super serious." Yeah, I mean, I'm at a loss here. I'm usually cracking jokes, and it's hard to crack jokes in somebody's face who's suffering through more tyranny than I hope that I ever have to. What is? Do you have hope? I mean, I guess that's the best way to put that. Do you have any hope of this thing turning around? What are the steps that would need to be implemented for something to change in this?
Look, that's the $1 million question right now for Australians.
Yeah.
It has to get worse before it gets better. That's the way I see it. Is we are going to need people to, once hopefully we can reach a boiling point where tyranny becomes too much for most Australians to handle. We are slowly seeing cracks forming in Victoria under Dan Andrews. So potentially we're looking at, by the time we have the federal election, which is March, April next year, we should be seeing, hopefully, some people turning against the government because of the COVID restrictions and the tyranny over that.
Yeah,
that's the hope.
Right.
But fingers crossed. But we don't know from data. We've seen soldiers being sent in. People didn't complain about that. They sent in, I think, 800 soldiers into Sydney to help the police enforce lockdowns. And Conservatives were saying, I heard multiple Conservatives up in Queensland say that, if the people had only obeyed, there wouldn't be the army that are on the ground. And these are coming from Conservatives, so the left is even a lot worse on this.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I've heard you say. Like, this is mostly supported. That's why
bipartisan.
The $1 million question is: do you have hope, and hope for what? If everybody is just going along with it and happy with it, with so many people being on, I would say, on the side of COVID, on the side of tyranny, on the side of lockdowns, I know you said it already, but how many people are vaccinated? Like, is it a majority that are vaccinated?
It is. I think it's around 70%.
Okay.
Possibly even 80% vaccinated nationwide. I think it could actually be 80.
Yeah. And we've seen the video of, like, the lady getting choked by the cop for not wearing a mask, which is very ironic. That which my theory on that is that COVID only thrives in oxygen. So if you deprive COVID of oxygen, then it dies, which is why we've been wearing these masks the whole time. So the cop was not actually harming her. He was saving her life by strangling the COVID out of her. I could be wrong.
But we also need oxygen to survive as well. So you're going to kill us and COVID.
Damn it!
So there's a small flaw there.
No, I'm just kidding. Have you seen a lot of that? Like, you said the fines and everything going on. Has there been, like, violence outside of the protests? Has there been violence for just day-to-day people from the cops, or is it mostly just fines?
Lots of police beatings and that sort of stuff. Lots of fines.
Did you say beatings or baitings? Sorry, I don't speak Australian.
Beatings.
Okay.
Beatings.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we have seen a fair number of a fair amount of that happening as well. Just outside of protests, but when it comes to the protests, that's where you see more arrests. Like, we had one guy who was arrested 8 months behind bars for organizing protests. Mm-hmm. Anthony Calouf, he was an Instagram personality. I think he had 20,000 followers, and they arrested him 8 months behind bars for organizing protests.
And this is just for going out, holding signs, and probably not wearing masks in public, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Which, I mean, at that point, they're breaking all kinds of laws that were just, created out of nowhere, because they're not even supposed to be out of their house. So I guess that makes sense. And by it makes sense, I mean, it's horrifying and it doesn't make any sense. But so, like, at what point do you... Feel free to not get yourself in any trouble here. We're talking about Minecraft, obviously, but in Minecraft, how far would this have to go before you would say, not that you would do it in Minecraft, but somebody hypothetically might be justified in Minecraft to do something about it that may or may not violate the NAP. It doesn't violate the NAP, obviously, because you're being screwed over by your government. But as a libertarian, where is that line for NAP violations and that type of shit? And what are your thoughts on that in Minecraft?
If that's in the military and on the ground, more than just enforcing lockdowns, but actually like standing with the police against protesters, that's when I think you'll start seeing violence against the government.
Yeah.
In Minecraft, of course.
Yes. Yeah. The protests going on, that, like, we're here complaining, calling burning down Starbucks peaceful protests, fiery yet mostly peaceful protests. Over there, you've got people getting locked up for actual peaceful protests. So that's fun. Have you taken up any hobbies over the last year and a half with all this free time on your hands?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, does this count? Because I started this during COVID.
Yeah, and I saw you started your own podcast, right?
Yes. We have a podcast working on a website, to try and get the news out of what's happening in Australia, try and get some independent media out there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Are there any rules? Like, are you violating any laws or speech codes or anything like that in having your own podcast and platforms and doing these types of interviews?
Not as far as I know, but the government could probably try and twist something.
Yeah.
Defamation or whatever, but they could probably get us if they wanted to. It's just a matter of, we're not massive yet, so is it worth them wasting their resources on us when there are bigger fish to fry? But if they did try and get people for speaking their opinion, it could lead to some trouble for the government.
How so? Do you mean?
Well, so we had one leftist YouTuber, Jordan Shanks. He criticised the deputy premier of New South Wales, and then there's currently a court case against him by the government because but people have his back because it's a conservative government that he was fighting against. So people are going to back him against the left is backing him against the conservative government. Mm-hmm. Where I am in Queensland, we have a Labor government which is left wing, so people would probably be more supportive of the government than me.
Gotcha.
But it definitely would lead to some legal issues if they start finding people and arresting them for just speaking their opinion online and in Minecraft.
Right. And how is your show and this network system that you're kind of setting up? Tell me a little bit about that and how has it been received? Do you have a lot of support of some of these underground voices that aren't going public, or how's that been?
Yeah, that's people are enjoying it. A lot of Aussies are happy to see someone out there doing it. We are hoping to get a few bigger personalities on in the next couple of months. The plan is to get big enough to cover the Australian elections next year.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we are growing. It's slowly but surely. We've got a long road ahead of us. But I think if we keep determination, if we keep persevering, we will hopefully get it big enough to start making an impact. But even if it's just a small impact, many hands make light work.
Yeah. Now I'm curious. It seems like, at least here, even for me, it's hard to accept. I feel like a lot of the reason why people aren't being pushed to action is that it's still, even a year and a half later, doesn't feel real. And maybe that's just me in my incubator and here, not leaving my house most of the time, but it still feels surreal, like it could go away at any point. Does it feel like that to you? Like this is just this surreal timeline that you're in for a second that's going to go away? Or, I mean, you're 19. Am I right on your age? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't imagine being 19 going through something like this and not killing myself, quite frankly, in your situation. So, I guess this is back to what hope do you have?
That is a good question. I don't think we're going to see this going away anytime soon. It's not really surreal for me. We're seeing, COVID camps being built right now. They'll be finishing in Queensland. They'll be finishing in middle of next year. So it's going to be here for the long haul. It's going to be a long-term thing. Because if they're building camps right now for middle of next year, it's obviously going to, last longer than the next 6 months. It'll be a long-term thing. They're even right now in Victoria, a bill got proposed yesterday by Dan Andrews' government to create permanent emergency powers.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
The word permanent emergency should never go side by side, but apparently they're doing that.
Yeah. These focus camps, these unity camps, we've reported on them on this show. We've talked about them a little bit, but all we get is whatever the media will report on. Do you have any what are they pitching this as to make it not sound horrifying? Like what are they? What's the sales pitch for concentration camps in 2021?
Safety.
Ah, yes. So
the government's argument has always been safety. Every measure that they bring in place, that they put in place that limits our rights, is for safety.
Yeah.
And the people buy it. A lot of people are buying it.
I mean, I guess they would, because they're being locked down in their homes even when they are vaccinated. If they're buying that, then why wouldn't they want all the evil heathens and the unclean plague rats to be put in their cages where they belong so that they can go back to their normal life? You mentioned 2024 in an interview. I don't remember who I was listening to. Oh, you were on Josh, and you were on another one that I listened to. I don't remember which one it was. Oh, was it Clint? Were you on Clint?
Yeah, it would have been Clint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about 2024 and that being this arbitrary number that they made up for when things go back to normal. What did they say going back to normal means when they are currently setting up concentration camps in preparation for the future?
So the plan back in April or May was that we would fully open up international travel by 2024, so we couldn't get out till then. They have since changed that. You can get out now if you're going to be away for more than 3 months. So people are already... So we had one guy on our show on Sunday who is literally going to flee to Central America to get away from the government.
Yeah.
And because it's more than 3 months, he can escape. But we are there are really tough restrictions on being able to get out, and we are expecting to see vaccine requirements for traveling soon as well.
Okay,
that's around the corner.
So right now you can't right now you can travel if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, or what are the restrictions currently?
Well, you need to get a COVID test. You need to get a COVID test and that sort of stuff to be able to take flight internationally. Unfortunately, none have left yet because the government's still fighting. Federal and state governments keep fighting over this all the time.
They're fighting you escaping the country.
They're fighting each other.
Right. You would think if they've got these sick people that want to get out of here, let them go. If the real issue is safety and health, just send all the unvaccinated people here to America or Central America or wherever. Do you have any thoughts of hopping the whenever, wherever, if you can squeak through? Do you have any thoughts of fleeing or what?
Yeah, it would be. It's probably an idea. It's probably my goal is to get out of when I can.
Yeah.
I am currently stuck because I'm still at university, but as soon as I finish that, I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I gotta ask, if university is what's keeping you there, is it really as bad as you're saying? I'm playing devil's advocate here because I'm sure some people are skeptical on it, being as bad as you're saying. And if you would stay to finish getting your college indoctrination, maybe it's not all that bad after all.
Well, the only reason that I'm staying right now with uni being here is because the state I'm in is not as bad as the other states. But if it looks like it's going to get worse, I'll get out before. I'll drop out and leave when I can. It just always got my finger on the button to leave. Right now, I hopefully fingers crossed I'm going to be fine. It's just but yeah, it's every day brings anxiety for Australians who are worried about the lockdowns. So if it looks like it's going to get really bad, then I'll be jumping the gun as soon as I can and leaving Australia.
Mm-hmm. So with the college stuff, I had a question and it left me. But with the college stuff, nope, It's not coming back. What are you in for? What are you going for?
Yeah, so I'm doing 2 degrees in law and world politics.
Nice. So prepping for the future. Are you going to
Yeah.
stick around and free all the slaves at the end of this, or?
No. The idea is to probably do something similar to that, though, looking after people who are being oppressed by their government and fighting for their rights.
That's cool. Yeah, my wife and I, we're in Illinois, and we're in the same boat, only to the extent, I mean, not to the extreme, but to the same extent that they're currently fighting some stuff tonight. We were just watching a live stream, actually, of them trying to push through this bill to where people can't sue their employer for being let go or whatever. It's just such a clusterfuck. But the whole thing, like, we're currently in the mindset we bought my wife's childhood home, and we've set this place up nicely, and I've got this studio and everything, and we're like, yeah, it might be time to peace out, and it would suck. It would be hard to leave even just this, but I feel like everybody's just got to figure out what that line is. Like, how far would they have to push this? How far would they have to go before you go, well, screw college, screw, all of this stuff. Like, what would they have to do? What would be the line for you to say, I'll hop a door and see how far I make it in the ocean?
As soon as we see, the government making its own, as soon as we see, permanent, as soon as we see what we're seeing right now in Victoria is a proposal to bring in permanent emergency powers, if we see stuff like that being brought in across the country, that'd be the time for me to go. But unfortunately, like, my folks are still, other governments, they've got the best intentions for us. So, like, it's all across Australia, people are still supportive of this. Unfortunately, as an anarchist, I've got to rely on the elections to give me an accurate picture of people's mindsets. I don't like relying on elections, but I have to, because that's the only way to find out how people actually feel. Because as we've seen with the US election in 2016, Brexit, the UK election, our last election, when the polling says that people support the left, it often still will be the right that wins in the election. So we've got to see it. We've got to wait to see what happens with the accurate polling that we get from the election. That's the only real way to know people's mindsets toward this. From what we've seen on Twitter is definitely that the left is going to win, but how that plays out in the real world is different, because Twitter isn't the real world. But unfortunately, It's a real cesspit of Aussie leftists right now. If you look up the hashtag "I stand with Dan" for 5 minutes, you'll become blackpilled for the rest of your life. That's how bad it is. He has his fan club that is about as bad as the mega cult was to Donald Trump.
Okay, and Dan is who?
Dan Andrews is the Premier of Victoria.
Okay. Gotcha. So it'll blackpill you just because they're awful?
Yes. Okay. He's the worst of the bunch of government leaders that we have.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's been, cracking down on the protesters in Melbourne.
Now,
the worst. Melbourne has actually had the longest lockdown anywhere in the entire world.
Yeah. I don't trust elections, and I can't imagine being in a situation. I mean, I guess we are to a small extent, but I can't imagine being in a situation where it's like, if politics doesn't work, if democracy doesn't work, which it doesn't, if it doesn't work this time, then we're really screwed. Like, what is the mindset there? Like, I don't know, just even here in America, we vote for ending abortion, or we vote for building a wall, or we vote for whatever. We vote for these single issue things that never happen because politicians are notoriously really bad at following through on things. How do you feel about, trusting an election to free you from your captivity? And is there any hopeful? Like, is there any guy coming up that you think is gonna make that happen?
I don't think you can vote your way to freedom, but the way I see it is it will show you people's mindsets towards lockdown, because we're going to see a lot of single issue voters on the issue of lockdown at the next election. So it'll be a matter of mindset. So if we can see a swing towards people, being more willing to oppose lockdowns and being like wanting to open up, we'll see that come out in the election polling results, because a lot of people are going to be voting only because of either they want tougher lockdown or they want less lockdown.
Yeah.
Because we do still have people calling for tougher lockdowns.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than it's been fun talking to you while we still can. So let's talk about the vaccine in particular. Like, I assume, and I probably should have led with this, but I assume you've not been vaccinated? Not that it's any of my fucking business, but it's a little pertinent for this conversation. Is there what was your reasoning, if you don't mind my asking, for not getting it? Are you a crazy conspiracy nut, racist, or whatever the hell, or was it the obvious things?
No. So as a law student, I'm concerned with not with the government not being held liable for the vaccine mandates.
Yeah,
that's my reason for not getting the vaccine. Is if we can't sue if we get affected by the vaccine. If it was their own free choice, no mandate, then I'd be fine because it's people's choice.
Right.
But if the government's mandating that you take the vaccine and then get sick, you can't then sue for that loss that you're suffering. That's my problem that I have with the vaccines.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with vaccine companies because we haven't been able to sue them for decades. But now it's worked its way into it went from you're going to be strongly encouraged right after giving birth, like this happened to us and our kid, our flipper baby. Obviously, it's deformed, as somebody told me on Twitter the other day. Our child is a deformed monster because we didn't vaccinate. I mean, it's not true, but Twitter be what Twitter be. So our child, after we gave birth, they already knew that we weren't going to do any of this stuff. We had talked to them about it, and I know everybody says I'm not anti-vax, but I am pretty anti-vax. I'll be completely honest. I don't care, especially at this point. If anything, this made me way more anti-vax, this whole shit. But we didn't. We went natural, and as she's in labor, the doctor or another nurse or somebody comes in to give one final sales pitch while my wife is like there giving birth on the table, screaming and in pain. This person comes over and they're like, "Now, we were wondering if you had thought about, this and this." Like, she's trying to sell her on vaccinating her kid then. Like, with all these things, I'm not saying, like, vaccines are always bad or always good or anything, but different people have different reactions. We know this, and we've never been able to sue these doctors or medical professionals or the people creating the vaccines. And now, not only are they strongly encouraged, they're being forced. And you can't do anything about it. Against your, are there legal steps you could take if, like, your employer insists there? I guess it doesn't really matter because the government's insisting anyway, but is there anybody that you can sue if things don't go well?
Not really. You're going to love this, but our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, used to be the Minister of Social Services. He implemented what's called a no jab, no play policy. If your kid did not get the vaccine for whatever it was when they were like in their first couple of years of being an infant, like if they didn't, so your kid, for example, it would apply to your kid if he can't get childcare, so he can't go to any childcare facilities at all because he doesn't have the vaccine.
Is this just COVID or is this all vaccine?
This is from years ago.
Okay, so they're saying
any vaccine that if your kid's meant to have a vaccine because they're a kid, like you get the vaccines at like 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years. Mm-hmm. If they don't get any of those if they get all those vaccines except one, this applies, and you can't get your kid into childcare facilities.
Okay,
so if you refuse to take one vaccine for your kid, then you suffer.
Wow. Okay. How about, like, were you vaccinated as a kid? Did you go through all the normal regimen, or are you clean?
Yeah. No, I didn't get a choice.
Right. Same.
No, so I have all those vaccines.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know. We don't have to get too deep into that because I'm not an expert on it, and I'm sure everybody's going to scream at me for even mentioning that I might be somewhat. I'm vaccine hesitant all around. Let's just say that, because there's never one magical cure that works for everybody without any repercussions or downsides. So I think that everybody should have the choice. And if you get them, I am fully vaccinated as of 1988 or whenever. I was pumped full of all the normal drugs. But I don't know. It's bullshit. The whole thing, the peer pressure is bullshit, and that this is just, it's unthinkable. Like, we're living in unthinkable times. I am at a loss for words for the shit that you're going through. What is I don't know, if you had to make a 5-year plan right now, assuming, like, based on what you've seen, how things are going, and how you think things might change or get better or worse, what would be your 5-year plan? Because you can't really plan for anything at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah, so it'll either go one of two ways. It'll go to the extremes. Either we're going to see complete government control, and people are going to support it, or we'll see people getting sick of it, and we'll see this regime overthrown. It'll go one of two ways. Either this entire thing will be scrapped, or it'll go maximum tyranny.
Yeah. What do you think
It's just a matter of... Sorry, yeah?
I mean, those could be the same thing, because you said it has to get better before it gets worse, so maximum tyranny might be the breaking point where people do something. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge, even here, let alone there, at what point people will start actually caring. And yeah, I don't know. So if it goes full tyranny, what do you think that looks like? If you had to guess, what's full tyranny in your mind?
So we're already seeing the government bring in permanent emergency powers. It's being brought in Victoria. It'll probably be brought in nationwide. It'll likely be passed in Victoria. It was brought in, the bill was proposed yesterday. It'll probably be passed within the next couple of weeks because the government has the numbers to push it through both houses of parliament. And that'll basically mean they can declare a pandemic if there is a disease that, quote, has the potential to give rise to a pandemic, but it's not yet a pandemic disease. They can declare a pandemic.
So just anything, potentially.
Yeah.
The cold someday might mutate into a pandemic, so...
And they've written into that law that it's written into that law, this bill, that the government can discriminate against you based on any characteristic that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an exemption to the Equal Rights and Equal Opportunities Act. And they can also override the Human Rights Charter that Victoria has, because in that charter they wrote in provisions that allow for it to be overridden for safety.
Okay.
So basically the government can take away any rights they want, and all they've got to do is basically prepare a report and give the report to Parliament. But it's basically the Premier can the Premier can rule by decree when it comes to pandemics. He can declare it for 3-month periods and renew it indefinitely. And if you don't comply, you'll be fined up to $90,000, which is, I think, $67,000 US, or spend 2 years behind bars.
For anything. For just whatever rule they make up having to do with pretty much anything.
If you fail to comply and you know that your actions are likely to cause harm to another person, that's your punishment.
Okay. So they can say, as long as they say, we're fucking you, they can fuck you.
Yeah.
As long as that's your consent letter. They signed, they forged your signature and said, "Hey, we're doing this just so you know. We said it, so it's okay now. It's legal."
Yeah, and it's bad across the country. So where I am in Queensland, I'm in our second biggest inland city, which is Toowoomba, biggest if you don't count Canberra, the national capital. We are about 2 hours west of Brisbane. The problem we have is that this is where they're building the COVID camp. It's being built 20 minutes away from us at an airport.
Mm-hmm.
The problem we have here is we're a conservative stronghold. We voted against the same-sex marriage plebiscite. That's how conservative we are. We're basically the Bible Belt of Australia. So there's low compliance rates here with the QR codes.
Yeah.
So bad that the newspaper is complaining about low compliance rates. So the government goes, okay, we'll build the camp here. That has two effects. One, it means that we're forced to comply because if there's a breakout, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, it also means the government can buy votes on the marginal coastal cities
So it's like if they
swing-
started building the camps here in America down in like Texas or something. They're like, you can keep being you rebels and not complying. We're just gonna set up camp in your backyard and see if you get the hint. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it'll basically mean that it'll basically mean that we have to comply regardless because they're going to have the unsafe, the unclean in a camp nearby. Plus, of course, it's going to buy votes. So there's a lot of marginal seats on the coast. The government federally, the Liberal government, Liberals, Conservative, it's weird. The Liberal government has a 1-seat majority.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a Labor state government, but Queensland federally votes Liberal. So if the Labor state government builds this camp here, which they are, it'll mean they can buy votes on the coast because looking at the people's safety without putting the infected where the people are. So it'll buy votes on the coast, flip the coastal cities, and then you're going to see a Labor majority, which is even worse. It's worse than the Liberals. It's either be eaten alive by spider bites,
Mm-hmm.
or be eaten alive by a lion.
Yep.
But basically, see, it makes us comply, and it means they can buy votes on the coast.
Right.
It's all being done to grab. It's all a power grab.
Yeah.
And they've even gone out and said that So our premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, she basically went out on the news and said this camp is going to be used to detain the unvaccinated.
Detain. Okay.
I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the general gist of her argument is to look after people who are coming in from overseas, to put them here to quarantine and to put if you're not vaccinated and you get COVID, they'll put you in the camp and detain the people who don't have the vaccine and all that sort of stuff. So lots of fun stuff there for us to look forward to.
Right. So they're not even pretending. They're not even flowering it up as like, oh, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna put you up in a hotel just to keep you safe. They're saying like what is their tone and tenor when they're saying we're going to put you in a concentration camp if you're sick?
It's all the safety argument. It's always been the argument of safety. Safety is more important than freedom.
Yeah.
And as Benjamin Franklin said, if you want a little bit of safety, you end up losing your freedom and your safety.
Yeah. And you deserve neither. Is there any point where you would get the jab, which is so stupid that we call it the jab? Is there any point where you would get this experimental drug forcefully injected into you? Is there any point where you would comply? Either you're convinced that it is a good, or things have gotten so bad that you just give up and say, screw it, I'll take my chances just so I can live? Is there any point like that?
It would probably be a question if I have no choice but to get the vaccine. That'd be. I'm not taking of my own free will. If I have to, it'll be because of vaccine mandates and coercion. But I don't plan to take it of my own free will.
Mm-hmm. So by coercion,
so the only reason I would take it, if the government, forced us to take the vaccine, for example.
Right. It wouldn't necessarily be something that's worth taking up arms and fighting to the death for. It's the very last thing you would like to do, and the only thing further than that probably means you getting shot anyway. So. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool, man. I mean, not. It's
yes.
awful. We'll go through some of these chats and see if anybody's saying anything. While I do, tell me more about this community that you're setting up. Are you guys taking steps to fight back against this? Like, are you guys making plans for political moves, or like, what's the plan there?
Culture war. The idea here is to change people's mindsets. So because we have mandatory voting, it means people have to vote regardless, or they can go and do what's called donkey voting, which is where you go get your name ticked off the electoral roll and then mess up the ballot paper so it doesn't count. But the stance we're taking is if you have to get out and vote to people who are more liberty minded. So especially our version of the LP, or which is the Liberal Democrats. Go out and David Limbrick, who's one of their members, he was recently on Clint's show, talking about it is in Victoria right now. So if like voting people who are more liberty minded, we can't vote away their freedom, but what we can do is if they get, because we also have preferential voting. So if we can give them a big enough percentage of the vote, then they're going to have to get covered by the news. And then if that happens, then people are going to be, some people who are passionate about politics, they're going to then go, what does this party stand for? They're being spoken about. So then they'd go and read the party manifesto, see what they stand for, and potentially win some converts that way. So it's all about the culture war. So between getting that result from elections, and also between just getting doing grassroots movements is what we're all about, doing grassroots stuff. Don't go through politics, don't go through institutions, just go to the people.
Yeah.
So we see it as being a cultural battle, not a political battle. We're not going to defeat COVID through politics. We have to defeat COVID tyranny through the people.
Yeah. Gotcha. And what are some of the ways that you're doing that? What are the main ways that you're getting the message out there? And are your people taking part in these rallies? Are you taking that kind of risk, or is it mostly just, communication, word of mouth type stuff?
So we had a couple of weeks ago, they had protests, and one of our guys was down in Perth. So we did a live stream, and he had his camera and was live at the protest, showing us what's going on in the protests. So we are, getting people out there on the ground, and we're expecting more protests coming up. So the idea is to expand on that, and the people at all the major protests, giving us coverage of what's on the ground to really get that word out to people, and to show this is what the media is saying the protests are this. They're actually not. They're actually something else. We've got media in Australia saying that the protesters are QAnon, far right, Nazis, extremists.
Of course.
And then the guy we had.
QAnon exists in Australia too? Holy shit! The plot thickens.
Our prime minister is portrayed by the left as being our version of Donald Trump.
Okay.
So we do. There is a small QAnon movement. People who see Scott Morrison as being our savior. It's not very big. It's not very popular. But apparently, if you go to the protests, you're far right, neo-Nazi, extremist. When we had the tradie protests a few weeks ago, which I'm guessing a lot of Americans would have seen, covered, people who are going out in high vis and protesting. Literally, the union boss said that these people were far right. They called their own union members far right.
Okay. Yeah. Union
if
members
you protest,
are always far right. That's well known. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had one guy, so the guy who was at the protest in Perth, he literally went and spoke to an Aboriginal who was there, who had a stand set up. He was all about getting your channeling energy and sort of stuff, and we're proving this guy is not a fascist,
right? Yeah,
disproving the media's narrative.
Absolutely. Yeah, the shit same all around the world, just in different brands, different levels and flavors, and it's all the same shit. And that leads me into I do want to pick your brain on some conspiracy stuff, but we're not going to do it on YouTube because fuck those guys. Are you down to stick around for a little bit of bonus and chat about some conspiracy stuff as well?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
Cool, man. Let's end on this then. I'm curious as to your thoughts. I mean, you didn't set out to play the role of a martyr, but you're currently kind of there in some capacity. Like, Australia is at best a warning signal to the rest of the world, I would say. Do you see it as that? And what would be your message to everybody else? Like Americans, the only people, the only country that matters, obviously. What would you be your I guess your warning or your message to people that are in slightly earlier stages of this stuff and seeing it come down the pike right now?
Pay very close attention to the news. Look at the videos that's coming out of Australia. Look at the videos of the police brutality and the news articles that you're seeing from more independent media sources. Heed the message. It's coming to you guys next.
Yeah.
So pay attention and get the word out before it gets that bad in your country.
Well, the problem with that, though, is half these people would be the same as the people in Australia, where they'd see unvaccinated people getting the shit kicked out of them by cops, and they'd be like, "That's the best police beatdown I've ever seen," even though we were just rioting and trying to get rid of police entirely a second ago, but now we're turning them on our neighbors.
We've literally had that. The same people who argued to defund the police last year are arguing for stronger police crackdowns against protesters.
Mm-hmm. Of course they are.
And they don't care that they're hypocrites. The police,
They never do.
The deputy
They never do.
commissioner, the state level deputy police commissioner last year said that it's a human right to be able to protest. This year, the police are saying that protests don't work. They've never worked. Don't do them.
Yeah. Awesome. Sweet. So, any final thoughts, and tell people where they can find you and listen to your podcast, find out more about your underground network that you got going on, and anything else you want to plug, man?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is LibertyDownUnder, UNDER. Twitter is UNDR. You can follow the network at OzLib Network. And then you can find our podcast on Spotify, Gumtree of Liberty, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any major podcasting platform. We're there, and we also do live streams as well on our YouTube channel, which is the Aussie Liberty Network on YouTube. We do live streams there sometimes.
Is there any way that, I don't know, is there anything that people can do to help, to donate, to, I don't know if finances would make any effect at this point, or is there anything that we can do to help you guys, other than bombing you back to freedom like we're known for?
Well, apparently Candace Owens wants to invade Australia to free us, so there's that. No.
Are you concerned about Americans being like what's worse? Australian government screwing you guys over, or the United States trying to help?
I don't think getting the U.S. Army involved is going to help anyone, because new government, same tyranny.
Right.
Having the government do it won't save us. It's still the government.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously, sharing what you see online, especially stuff about the police, is probably because that will reach the left more. Because we had even BLM at one point was complaining about the protest, was complaining about the vaccines, talking about doing a protest, which is good for us because we can literally take that story and say to the left, you call protesters far right, but BLM is going to protest against the vaccine. You can't call BLM far right.
Right.
We are looking at potentially in the future, once we get everything set up, doing helping people fight legal battles in the court against government mandates. That's definitely something we're going to look at in the future.
Gotcha. Well, man, I hope the best for you, and I can't even imagine. Stay in touch and let me know how things are going for sure. Because I'm curious to see how this thing unfolds, and I'm sure you're curious as well. But
yes,
you're always welcome here, man, and we'll keep you in our thoughts and prayers for whatever. But yeah, hang in there, I guess. And yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us the time, and hopefully opening some eyes to the shit that is going on in the world currently, to just your normal everyday Australian. But stick around, man, and we'll kick the after party here in just a moment. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the live stream. I had less words than normal because what can you even say? What can you even say other than holy shit over and over again, and eventually that gets old. But holy shit. This is the stuff that we talk about in our news coverage, stuff about Australia. It's apparently Australia exists, and apparently all the tyranny comes right along with it. But if if you're terrified, if you think that this is coming, now is the time. If you're going to do something about it, now or never, really, because things aren't slowing down. We keep thinking that they're gonna, and they keep speeding up. So let's do something here now, and let's at least start screaming about this more than you have been. I know some of you do, because I've got some awesome people in the chat who are talking about it. Oh, Shannon Lee's taking a potty break. That's important. That's an important thing to share. If you would like to join the Downers Club and get the bonus content, the after party, the stream that we're going to jump over into now in the Facebook, you can get that by going to patreon.com/thesystemsdown and signing up for as little as $5 a month, where you'll get all of our bonus content every single week. We're going to go talk about some conspiracy stuff and some more horrifying realities here in just a moment. Until then, tomorrow 2 Central, 2 o'clock corn time. We're kicking the news I believe Travis is back coming into the studio, and we're going to be breaking down some Alec Baldwin shooting people and some Dr. Fauci torturing dogs and all sorts of fun stuff. So be here for that tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. live for the news. And I believe we've got somebody, I won't say anything yet, but we've got another fairly sizable guest that's coming on here soon. So lots of fun stuff in the works, guys. Stay tuned, stick around, and go support your Australian brothers, because they're not doing great. And time will tell, I guess. Stay positive, question everything, stay uncomfortable. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace out.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe on your way out and help us change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. And if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/thesystemsdown for bonus episodes of the show every single week. Until next time, please continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. GoulashMedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.